Hey everyone, Tankenstein here, and welcome to Stock to Spaded. In this episode, I'll be showcasing the M60A3 TTS, otherwise known as the Tank Thermal Sight. This is a currently rank 6 battle rating 9.0 medium/main battle tank in the American Ground Forces tech tree, and represents an end of the line to the M60 series of tanks in, again, the regular Ground Forces tech tree. This is an overall upgrade over the predecessor in the tech tree, the M60A1 Rise P, and features a thermal sight, laser rangefinder, slightly better power to weight ratio due to a reduced weight, and a better APF SDS shell at the top, all for a very small increase of 0.3 BR. So that being said, what I typically do in Stock to Spaded is I play 3 matches, one fully stock, one about halfway spaded, and the third and final match will be fully spaded. That way you can see exactly what this vehicle is, all the way from the beginning to the middle to the end, to see if you actually want to grind for this vehicle. And throughout, I'll kind of give you some notes, let you know exactly how I feel, how it plays, and whether or not it's worth it, especially at the very end, once I get all those juicy upgrades. Now that being said, if you'd like, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, so it all helps out tremendously. But either way, thanks again, and let's get into this video. So there are just, I think, 1 or 2 other differences with this compared to the M60A1 Rise P that I noticed. Physical differences, and it's pretty much just relating to the ERA. So first and foremost, the ERA panels here at the front, they are a little bit more like angled, I guess you could say. They're more highly angled, but you also have it where, I thought that was an enemy, that's just a house. But you also have it where they are also brought together. There's not really much spacing between them, which is pretty, in my opinion, interesting. This thing is so slow. It is. If I get caught out here, I will be very upset. But looks like I will not, at least for now. But yeah, and I also think that there are maybe a few pieces of ERA removed on this compared to the Rise P, which would make sense because there is a little bit, this thing weighs about a half ton less. So, because of that, I think I just saw someone. I hate not having a laser rangefinder, but that is definitely an enemy. If I can just aim up, hopefully I can get him, and I can. Very nice. BMP2M, no laser rangefinder. Too bad I cannot help this guy because I am fully stock. But ultimately, this thing, it just seems like a general upgrade. I mean, once I get that laser rangefinder, it'll be huge. Absolutely huge. Once I get the APF SDS, which is a rank or tier 1 modification, that'll be huge. You know, like, this thing is, all in all, a very big upgrade over the standard variant, or rather not the standard variant, but the M60A1 Rise P, which I'm thinking about doing a gameplay video on in the future. Not entirely sure when I will. Probably not going to do a Stock to Spaded on that. It doesn't really need it. But I feel like this vehicle in particular, the TTS, is perfect for a Stock to Spaded. I really wish these people would just say, hey, we have an enemy nearby, and point it out exactly where. But being that this is an end-of-the-line vehicle, I feel like it pretty definitively warrants a, Stock to Spaded. So we might have an enemy over here. And this is one of the biggest issues with this vehicle, easily, is the fact that it is just so slow. I think stock, it gets something like 14 horsepower per ton, which is awful at this BR. Just terrible. Right? Like, you are getting, I think, the maximum horsepower on this thing is something like 750, which isn't a ton, obviously, at least for a 53-ton vehicle, or just under 53 tons, I think it is. Whereas the standard, like the base level Abrams, weighs maybe 2 tons more than this, but has literally two times the horsepower compared to this when fully stocked, or fully spaded rather. So it's a huge, absolutely huge difference in terms of, overall power. Ooh, Lord! That was a nasty kill. But overall, I mean, it really depends on a few things as well, right? Like, I could be upset with this Heat FS, and I think in general, it's not very good. But we're also at a BR where there's not necessarily every tank is going to be covered in ERA or have tons, literally tons of, composite armor or anything like that. You just have a lot of well-armored vehicle in their own ways, but not like necessarily the most advanced armors or whatever. So Heat FS is definitely still feasible on this, especially with the M456A2 with 400 millimeters of armor pen at max, which is pretty much enough to do whatever you want. But it looks like we have completely annihilated this team. But, I think I'll keep this in because I went over enough of the stock variant of this. Remember, stock to spaded, it is not all about me showing off my best moments with a tank. It is not all about me showing off the worst. It's about showing off how this thing does in your typical match, and if the match tends to be good, I'll include it. If it's bad, I might even include it. But I want to go over everything I can. Gameplay and commentary, so long as the commentary is decent, are equally important because you guys need to know, at least from my perspective, as a guy who's been playing this for over 11 years, whether or not I think it's a worthwhile thing, especially if it's stock, how this thing actually plays, because the stock grind, as we all know, can be a real pain in the tuchus. So that said, let's get into the second match here. We'll be about halfway spaded in that match. We will have all the upgrades, so full full FPE, full parts, APF SDS, laser rangefinder, maybe an engine, but anyways, that said, let's get into the second match and have a good time. If you guys couldn't guess, this is the halfway spaded match, and I kind of want to extend my apologies to you guys, because this is going to be a little bit heavier in dialogue than I normally do, but there's a good reason for it. Quite simply, the M60A3 TTS is a torture chamber. Trying to grind through this thing has been an awful experience, and I have it with a talisman. In fact, actually, I put a talisman on it, I'm pretty sure, before I grinded anything on it, before I even played my first match. This thing has just been abysmal. I've hated it pretty much. Wow, that was unexpected. I've hated it pretty much the entire time I've played it, and with the exception of its armament, it has been booty chatter. Its armor is pretty insufficient, to say the least. I'm not going to say it's absolutely terrible, but it's not really good. The ERA on it just doesn't seem like it's doing all too much, at least versus the preeminent sort of ammunition options that we have. It's very slow. Pretty much everything is going to pass you. This A1L44, for example, not a very fast vehicle in its own right. That was ugly. And he is going to pass me pretty easily, but we do have... I'm not going to be able to shoot through that, but I can do this. I do have my laser rangefinder, mind you. Got the kill, very nice. Kind of feel like we have someone back here. So in order to kind of prevent that, I'm going to do this. Now, I do have the laser rangefinder, tank thermal sight, and if you guys didn't see initially like what my mods were, I mean, I do have a decent amount of modifications unlocked on this. The engine, for example, it does help. I'm not saying it doesn't help with the speed, because it certainly does. Wow, I'm getting lucky. But when it comes down to it, in general, the speed on this thing is abysmal. Stock is 14.5 horsepower per ton. I think where I am now, it's probably around 15 horsepower per ton, just kind of doing some real basic math, not good math. And its turret traverse is mediocre. It's like 16.5. It's not absolutely terrible, but at this BR, you certainly want better. The APF SDS, I have been firing it numerous times. There was a match where I fired at a Class 3P. If you guys don't know what that is, it's pretty much just a wheeled tank destroyer. with very steep, very sharp frontal armor, and very thin frontal armor, and I bounced off of it 3 times in a row. So it's been just an absolutely abysmal experience thus far. And also, before we get into the next match here, the fully spaded match, and, you know, my apologies if I'm playing with an F11, F1, it's just been that bad. But in order to get through rank 3, each mod on rank 3 of the M60A3 TTS costs 27,000 RP. And each mod on rank 4 costs 23,000 RP, which is absurd because the M60A1 Rise P is something like half of that. Half of it, give or take. It's just abysmally ridiculous in order to try to grind through it, and it's been an awful experience. While the armament is, for the most part, competent, the vehicle itself has been a big letdown thus far, and the grinding experience has been tremendously bad. So as I said, let's get into the third match, see what we could do, but yeah, I want to get this thing fully spaded as soon as I can because it has been a drag to try to use. So here we are fully spaded in the M60A3 TTS, and before we even get anywhere into this battle, let me go over some of this video. I mean, like, look at this. I'm going up a hill at 12 kilometers per hour. Anyways, this vehicle, the armament isn't bad. It's actually quite decent. Plus the fact that it has a stabilizer, which I guess at this BR is more or less expected. But it also has thermal, laser rangefinder, which aren't necessarily guaranteed. At least the thermals aren't. That's the good. The bad, however, is that this is on an M60 chassis, where instead of maybe adding on a composite plate, kind of like what they did with the T62 M1, or some other vehicles like the T55 AM1, or other, you know, whatever, right? Take your Soviet vehicle here. And instead of doing something like that, they added, in my opinion, meh ERA. It's not the worst, mind you. I've actually survived quite a few hits with it. However, it's not all that good. And really, in my opinion, the worst sin of them all with this vehicle is the mobility. How do you get the gall to take a vehicle that's already considered to be pretty damn slow, right? Like, this vehicle had been in production for decades at the point where they had, or not, I don't know if it was in full production, or at least it had been in use for decades at the point where they said, okay, let's go make the TTS. How do you do that without saying, you know what, let's increase its horsepower slightly? Slightly. By 50. 50 horsepower would be good. And you know how I know that? Because the engine modification, or the transmission any movement modifications on this thing, each and every one, they are noticeable improvements over the previous, you know. So like, for example, when you add the filters, you notice it, and it's nice in that regard. Nice, got a kill. But in all, and I don't know if I mentioned this, I've tried doing this 2 or 3 times now, but in my opinion, this has been one of the most unpleasant grinding experiences I've ever had in War Thunder for 2 reasons. One, and I would say probably the biggest reason, is because the modification costs for this thing are ridiculous. I mean, you're talking 27,000 RP just to get the final modifications, which are the best. I think that's where you have thermals, tier 3 modifications. You need, I think that's where you get your laser rangefinder. Those cost 23,000, and that's where the bulk of mods are anyway. So even if, you know, you want something else aside from thermals or the laser rangefinder, for whatever reason, those are, again, in my opinion, the best and most important. That's where you're going to find them. Outside of, like, the base level APF SDS, which are actually quite decent, I think it's the M735, it's really just not a lot of fun. Let's see, can I hit him? Probably. Oh, that's weird. Says I shot right in front of him. See if I can make him... No, I don't think I will. My aiming has been really bad right now. But that's no fault of the vehicle. That's just my own. Obviously. Hopefully it's obvious. Okay, got transmission and radiator. I'm gonna die. Oh, I did not die. Let's hope not for a bad shot this time. And a kill. Leopard 1A5. Not too bad. So, I mean, overall, the armament on this vehicle, 105, thermals, M774, laser rangefinder, they're all pretty decent. And I don't really think that I can make an argument otherwise, you know? It's not bad in that regard. However, again, what we are seeing is we're seeing a vehicle that's let down by its chassis. And that is a huge, huge problem in my mind. It's not even that the chassis is bad, it's just that this thing is so slow at its BR. I mean, it's absurd. Like, the ERA, as much crap as I want to talk about it, it at least has protected me. But between the RP costs of the absolute best modifications, they are absurd. And if you're watching this, Gaijin, please reduce them. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you're getting people who don't play the TTS, I am sure that's the biggest reason. They are ridiculous. But, again, at least this has a decent enough package of armament and decent enough armor that does work on occasion. You know, the ERA does occasionally work. I mean, you've seen it here, I think, once or twice, even in this match, where it's been okay. But would I recommend grinding for this? And if... Okay, I'm going to have to respawn, because thankfully I do have a respawn. But with that said, do I recommend grinding for this? No, I don't. Not currently. So, if it cost less RP to grind out the mods, I would say sure. You know, it's not a great vehicle. It's not a terrible vehicle. I think it's an okay end to the tech tree. Personally, or at least that line in the American ground tech tree, we'll have to wait and see if anything else gets added in the future. But personally, I think that the Rise P, the M60A1 Rise P, at whatever BR, 8.7 BR, is better than this at 9.0. And a large part of that comes down to the fact that I am in up tiers far more often with this vehicle than I would be with the Rise P. So between the fact that the Rise P is in itself okay, I mean, this only has Gen 1 thermals, which aren't game-breaking. You know, they're important, of course, but they aren't going to necessarily win you a fight. And, you know, they both have the M735, which is perfectly serviceable. I really don't know if you need the TTS. It's a good vehicle, and I think it's good if you want to see the end of that tech tree through the line of the tech tree. However, I mean, you can see just the struggle this thing is having going up this hill. It's absurd. I mean, just a little bit more horsepower would go so far with this, and really, it's a shame in many ways that it is as slow as it is. You know, just the amount of downtime I'm having between battles is also absurd. I mean, it's just, the entire vehicle is kind of, like, this is a case in point, like a study in why you need mobility. You know, even 50 more horsepower would be so much better. And honestly, I made I think a Magak M6 or 6B Gal, whatever video, right, the Squadron. And I gave the mobility score a little bit too high in that. I think I said it was like a 3.75, when meanwhile it's got essentially the exact same mobility as this vehicle. It is not good. So, yeah, I think that overall this is an okay vehicle, but to give you my stock Spaded opinion, like I said, grind for it, sure, but I would wait until the RP costs come down for all the modifications, because right now, at current, it is just absurd. Absolutely absurd, not worth it. Also, we are about to get nuked. As you can see, we have a guy with a nuke, so hopefully the match doesn't end here, but if it does, you will see it go up in a ball of flame that, you know, it's pretty impressive. I've gotten a nuke once, by the way, if you guys ever want to check that out. It's my IKV-91 video. But I'll go ahead and try to kill whoever's here first. Hopefully I can get a kill. If not, not too bad. I'm not going to be upset about it. There we go. Got myself a kill. Can't complain about that. So, like I said, not bad. 3 kills, 2 assists. But I'm not that guy. And I don't think this vehicle ever will. So, take it as you will. But thanks so much, everyone. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But this is just not... I think it's too slow to really... Unless enemies come to you, it's too slow to reliably be top tier in any match that you're in. Thanks so much, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.